welcome to user interface design, 5th module. We are going to discuss today about the kinds of tests where we have introduced in the previous sessions. The kinds of test is mainly used for confirming the requirements, users requirements, as well as the good guidelines for the designers, and to identify the design problems and users leads. Users will be using the interfaces and he has to learn the user interfaces. That's what we have discussed in the previous sessions. Today we are discussing different methods of testing, something called heuristic testing, heuristic evaluation process. So where it is one of the method of testing. This type of testing we will going to discuss in detail, and we understand what do you mean by it, heuristic testing and all. So next type of method of testing is cognitive walkthrough testing. So the word cognitive is nothing but the learning process or thinking process of the user's perspectives. So we are testing with respect to the user's perspectives. Initially, heuristic testing means it is something like identifying the problems by evaluating the systems. Evaluating the system in the sense that we develop a prototype and ask the users to use the prototype without knowing it. So how we use this prototype, according to that we are listing out the parameters, the characteristics of the human, how he is using it, and we are identifying the problems what he is facing from the prototype of using new things. That means he don't know anything whenever he was using the product and he faced some problems in using those product. Those type of methodology of testing is called as heuristic testing. This is one type of testing. Heuristic, we call it as evaluation. Okay, we used to evaluate the users learning, okay, user learning by giving a prototype for the users. So by this we can easily identify the problems. We can easily identify the problems what he is facing. So without knowing anything, just we are giving a prototype for the users to use it, and whenever the problem is facing, it is easily identified compared to other methods. So it is better method. Initially we can find out what is the difficulties the user is facing while using the product. By using this, what is the advantages of using this? It is very easy to do it. Okay, we develop a prototypes and we give that prototype to the users to use it. So and while he finding difficulty in using the product, so we can identify the problems easily. Okay, the second one is it's relatively less cost. That means no need of spending more time on the product and evaluation process and time. So just we need to spend the users time, that's all. People who are using those product is spending the time of using their product, and we can identify many problems. Okay, not only a specific problems and technical problems, we can identify the many problems he is facing. So disadvantages is since the person who are using those product may not be expertized in using it. So we need to teach initially what he is going to do, what he wants to going to do, and then we need to identify. For evaluators, it is very difficult for making the product more comfortable in using those products. For example, if we give a product to the person who is not knowing about it, he may ask many questions. The evaluator's role feels difficult to answer individual questions because he is not knowing actually exact product of it. Even a small problems also he will be discussing with the evaluators. So, but it is an advantageous. But for evaluator it is more difficult because he wants to teach individual tasks and he wants to communicate with the users and he wants to know all the product difficulties when he is developing a product, Like that we need to know, and while we are doing such things, we have to identify the experts of that product, experts of the product in the sense that people who are knowing those product very well. Not only from the development team we have to know the product, we should also know take the explanation of the product with respect to the other teams also. So identifying the evaluators for these process feels difficult, that's all. But other process and all, it is very easy. Okay, just we need to develop and we need to give the prototype from him. So from that we can easily identify the prototypes. To perform these evaluation process, so to perform these evaluation process, we need to follow certain steps. Okay, the step something like we need to provide a different sessions. We need to provide a different sessions for making arrangements for the person. Okay, for example, in the sessions we need to identify the evaluators. So we need to identify the users who are going to participate in it. The users needs to give a proper time for him. Okay, and he needs to give a clear picture with respect to what he wants to do it in the form of checklist. Okay, so what type of task he wants to do it, and the checklist needs to be identified, and he wants to select those checklist when he was going to execute the process, like that. So we need to provide a evaluation process by providing a proper sessions, and also assembling in the particular places, assembling in the particular places. After getting a input from the users, the evaluator has to prepare a copy of the observation what he has made it. That also plays the major role. And once again we need to reconduct the process which he wants to do it. Like that the proper evaluation is being done. So these type of evaluation needs to be effectively observed by conducting a proper feedbacks from the list of a person. Okay, what are the things he has done in the evaluation process, that needs to be done, and we need to give it from it. From these we are taking a feedback. So this is the first method. Heuristic process means people are not knowing what he wants to do it. Just we need to create a list of checklist, and we need to ask him how actually this process will be working, and then we need to analyze, okay, effectively, and we need to find the proper descriptions of the corresponding testing process. This is one of the method of testing. So without knowing anything, just the prototype needs to be developed, and we need to train users, and we need to provide those prototype to him. And the evaluation process is to observe how it is being done in the form of checklist, and he need to select the feedback, and that feedback needs to be given. This is one type of feedback method for testing. Second method of method is cognitive walkthrough. So this cognitive walkthrough is the second method. Cognitive method is one of the method. So this method is being developed for context with respect to the context of task. Okay, for example, what task he wants to do it. So according to that, we need to develop a prototype. Context to the task, we need to develop a prototypes, and from these we are identifying the user performance. user performance. Okay, so we will identify how actually the user is performed. From cognitive walkthrough, we will identify the process of doing the task with respect to the context, with respect to that context. This is more advantageous and it is more clear compared to heuristic evaluation. In heuristic evaluation, just we have given the list of the task which he wants to do it, and the users are observing it. Here clearly we will be listing out what are the concept of things needs to be done by the users, and there is a less risk with respect to the evaluators. The role of evaluators is already been done. So only thing that we need to give the flow of execution of the process. So it will be easy for the evaluators to evaluate how the users is evaluating. It is something like developing a prototypes along with the guidelines, So if the user is observing the guidelines for performing the tasks, then it is well and good. Otherwise, so it cannot be worked properly like that. Easily we can identify the faults by using it. So for doing this, we are not using a prototypes. Okay, prototypes in the sense that just we are using a functional. We are not using functioning prototypes. We are using a actual non-functioning prototypes itself while developing the cognitive walkthrough testing process, because we are working along with the context of the task which we are doing it. Since we are not using a functional prototypes, it is less cost comparatively other methods of prototypes, and then we are having an alternate solution always. So if this is not working, we are giving an alternate solutions for it, and these can be done and it can be observed by the developers, because developer itself can give a different methods for identifying the process. Actually it is more structure compared to heuristic evaluation. In heuristic evaluation, there is no proper structuring. Here already been fixed what needs to be done, and only thing that we have to make the users to learn the process by himself. But while we are performing, it is very difficult for the users. Okay, disadvantages is it's very difficult for the users to observe all the operations, and sometimes when he was doing those things, he may skip some of the concept, and he may go to an appropriate. That means some of the concepts may be missed by him. That can be one of the difficulties which we are doing it. So to perform this, we need to provide some guidelines. Okay, we need to provide some guidelines. What are the guidelines means? We need to give a proper descriptions with respect to the task what he wants to do it, and the users should have a knowledge with respect to the product which he is using it. So for that, the developers needs to give a proper descriptive representations of the task, and the need of representation of the work of information in the form of a list. He needs to give a list of content, and corresponding actions needs to be done, needs to be clearly represented. Okay, that is the guidelines we need to follow when we are conducting a cognitive test. Okay, and the developers role here, instead of evaluators, what has been done, because developers itself is been developing the corresponding prototypes for the users performance with respect to the context. So here the developers plays the major role in assigning the corresponding guidelines for doing the task for the users, and if any guidelines is skipped by the users, corresponding actions needs to be taken. Okay, will be depends on the developers who has been developed the prototypes for testing the cognitive test. That is the main thing. So when we are doing this type of operations, so it may take 60 to 90 minutes as per the experiment has been done. The third method is think overload evaluation. Think overload evaluation. This is the third method of testing. In this third method, think overload tasking, while we are performing a task, it is an extension of cognitive walkthrough. It is an extension of cognitive walkthrough. Whenever it is used, see, not only it is an extension of cognitive walkthrough, it is an extension of evaluation process as well as cognitive means thinking process, right? So not only we are performing a task in the cognitive with respect to the context, we have done with respect to the context, right? Instead of context, we are doing with the specific. So that's what actually we want to do it, right? So we are developing a prototype with respect to the specific, while the thinking is not being diverted in a different dimensions. So corresponding specific task only we are going to do it. So whenever we performing a specific task for the prototype which we have developed for the specific task, we are also going to record. We are going to record it, and we are analyzing the process. We are analyzing the process, how we has done it. So that means we develop a prototype with a specific task, and each task will be monitored or recorded, and it is put it for the analysis purpose. So widely this type of prototypes is being used now, and it is more advantageous because we are optimally utilizes the specific task for representing the task, and we give more insights to the user's reasons. Okay, for example, if if the user who is using those product, if he is unable to do it, so some pop-up message will be given telling that why you are not used it. So he has to give appropriate reasons while he is not using those product with the pop-up messages. Like that, such type of evaluation is called as think aloud evaluations. So where the prototype is being developed for the specific task while he is doing his operations, and each operations will be recorded and it will be analyzed immediately, and that will be used inbuilt. Okay, instead of making a evaluators in a heuristic after performing an operations, and instead of developers supports for the cognitive walkthroughs, think overload is something like an automations. We develop a prototype with respect to the specific task, and it's also been recorded and it is used for analysis purpose. So it will be more advantageous compared to all other two prototypes, but the difficulty is the users may think it is overburden in using it. Okay, but we can perform several tasks with a less time. So this is the major role, okay, with respect to this method, and this is widely used method in the testing process. So all these operations like heuristic evaluation, cognitive walkthrough, and think overload evaluation, all these operations will be used with respect to the usability test. Okay, with respect to the usability test. So all the testing process needs to be done with respect to the usability test itself. So the main usability test will be done. Okay, all this testing will be done for real world conditions, and it is used for measuring the specific task, and we are identifying the problems when the user is using those products. The identified problems will be given for the developers to remodel it, and we retest the concepts. By this we can develop the prototypes which we have developed as an user interface through the actual working environment, and if any problems faced by the users, that can be identified at the testing level itself, and it can be modified immediately, and it can be used for occurring of the problem. It can be reduces the reoccurring of the problems. Such type of things will be done by using something called classical experiments. Okay, classical experiments in the sense that classic experiments will be done means like we are developing a prototypes, okay, with two or more flavors, version 1, version 2, like that. These prototypes will be given for the different users and each things will be measured by the user, each things will be measured by designers, okay, how the users is performing depends upon the subjective measures and depends upon the objective measures. Subjective measures in the sense that generally he will be identifying some of the problems the users is facing. So that means he concentrate on the user's satisfactions. Objective measures means with respect to the performance of the users who perform the particular task. Such type of conducting the experiment like developing a 2 or more prototypes and giving the users, giving a different users to use those product is called as classical experiment prototypes. This comes under the usability test after developing the prototypes and using the different methods. The second method, we are using something called focusing on the group, focus group. So in this method, we are discussing about a group of people who are using the prototypes and getting a opinion from them. For example, when we are using a prototypes, that prototypes may be used generally, but that general prototypes may not be used by the many peoples. So only we group some of the people and we try to get a input from those group of peoples, and through that we are writing our own guidelines for overcoming the drawbacks of it, general one. So like that we develop the usability test after developing a different kinds of test by using a different methods. So next we use a choosing of a testing. How do we choose the testing? So next, how do we choose the testing? Testings can be chosen by different methods, okay, different methods and the procedures while using choosing a testing. Choosing a testing methods depends upon the whether the product is used for project is used for the user's perspectives or the business objectives. Choosing a methods plays the major role. So different methods we have discussed, something like heuristic method and cognitive method, as well as think overload methods. Different methods like that we have used it. So this method can be used depends upon the development process, okay, depends upon the development process. So as we know that when we are using a heuristic users, the observers plays the major role. So if the observer is more efficient for monitoring the user's perspectives, then we go for heuristic process. Or else if the user developers will be more comfortable in developing the process and the procedure and structuring of the task, then the cognitive walkthroughs is efficient. And or else we do the automations by taking the heuristic as well as the cognitive process, and we use a think overload process like that. So it's all depends upon the developers developing the interfaces for performing process. While developing the interfaces of the process, he needs to develop the testing process itself. Okay, so what are the testing process he needs to do it? He need to develop, and also he need to conduct without knowing. Okay, while developing itself, the users needs to develop the testing plans also. So what are the testing plans you need to develop? So while developing a testing plan, he need to consider the scope of the testings. Scope of the testings will depends upon the various factors, and also it's also depends upon something like stages, different stages, whether he is in the design stages, whether he is in the is having a testing time is available for the testings, or else any extra money is being allocated for the testing, means he can do it with the unit testing itself, and some interfaces we need to add it along with the testing itself, like that. So while he is developing a product, he needs to conduct some operations, something like a testing plans. These testing plans will be done with respect to the scope of the test, as well as with respect to the purpose of the task. Purpose of the task in the sense that the performance goals, performance of the users with respect to the goals, and also with respect to the accomplishments. That means the users feel comfortable in using the testing use or not, that needs to be checked with respect to the purpose, because some people while using the interfaces, if they ask for the testing process, okay, initially in learning, it is very they feel difficult. So depends upon the whether he is been liking to use the testing process, along with identifying the using the interfaces also we need to take care. So like that we need to identify the testing plans with respect to the purpose as well as the scope. The second method of developing and conducting the testing is test participants. Okay, we need to identify the participants, because every testing, whenever we are doing the testing, we can't give a testing for all the peoples. We need to identify the particular participants for the testers, and the testers needs to be assembled. Okay, he has to be kept in some places, and we need to give a proper guidelines for performing in operations. And the third method of developing a testing is we need to conduct the test. While we are conducting the testing, means like we have to give the proper plans, okay, plan, and we need to assemble some of the people, and we also give some checklist for conducting the data, and also we need to collect the data, and the collected data needs to be analyzed. Okay, collected data needs to be analyzed, and from that we considered a proper feedback. These proper feedbacks will be given to the designer, okay, designer or developer of the product. Okay, like that we are calculating the testing process when we are doing it. This is one process. After doing this process, okay, after conducting the test process and all, we need to retest the process. Retest the process is nothing but the modification of the things which we have already developed. So depends upon the feedback from the users. Okay, depends upon the feedback from the users. So in this retest, we need to follow some test in terms of explaining the objective of the test for the software who has not been participate. That means when we are performing a retest, we should not participate the people who have been already done it that process. We need to develop a new team for going for the retest, because we may feel that the person who has developed the test earlier process may feel that whatever he has done it true, but the things is not been accepted by the users. That should not be felt by the developers. For that purpose, new team is being formed for retesting process, and we need to give a proper recording. We need to provide a materials in terms of analysis. which is been done it in the previous, and also we need to give a recording concepts. Okay, the new users will be understanding the testing process through the materials and the feedback which is taken by the testing process earlier, and the recordings which has been done, and also it is been written. Okay, written documents is also been shared in each stages what has been done, starting from verbal prototypes till the questionnaires, what he has formed it. Whenever we are developing a prototype, then we need to perform such type of operations, verbal prototype till the questionnaires prototype, like that. And we need to give some interactions with respect to the peoples also who have been participated for the testing process. That interactions also needs to be given for the new testers. Along with that, we need to give a checklist. Okay, checklist should contains with respect to proper format. So in terms of time of performance of the task and errors made by the performance task, unexpected actions occurs by the users. Okay, and system features with respect to the users and with respect to the not users, and difficulty in using the particular features when he was made it, and some system bugs and failures also needs to be recorded, and it needs to be provided in the form of a checklist for the retesting peoples, and this needs to be recorded, and that needs to be done it in a systematic way. So after performing that, after performing the retest operations, we need to go for analyzing the two testing and retesting process. So and then if any modification is required, so we need to do it, and also we need to perform a retest if needed. Okay, or else we need to finalize for the other things. These will be done by compiling the two process. Okay, compiling the two process with respect to the data which is being given by the test 1 and test 2 with all testing participations, and listing out some problems which they are facing, and in that listing of problems we need to prioritize. Okay, and prioritize the problems what they are facing. Okay, we should not give the preference for the test 1 and test 2 itself, or test 2 preference will be given. So it will be given to, along with the prioritized with respect to the frequency of occurrence, and also we need to develop a solution for the problems which is been listed out by the two people, and if any modification is required for the changes, for the need for improvement, that needs to be done, and then we need to give for the testing once again. Okay, we need to give a testing for the once again. Once it is been finalized, then we need to give for the working modules. Okay, then we need to give for the working systems. Okay, then we need to give for the working systems. In these working systems, clearly we need to specify the actual system gone through in terms of interview with the users, in terms of interview with the users, in terms of survey, in terms of grouping and analyzing, in terms of supporting support lines, in terms of online suggestions, if it is needed, in terms of newsletters. Okay, in terms of newsletters, hope you people are using any product, So you will get a informations about the product, what is it and how it works, like that. Even people are well reading or not, but when they are using those products, usually they will read the things and then it will be done, or else it will be used something like user performance. User performance means the people who are using those product, when he is in the form of data logs that needs to be taken into considerations while developing it. So from this we are developing the prototypes. So how, so the testing process will be followed like this, starting from identifying the prototypes, okay, and then identifying the methods, okay, and then going for retesting process by the following procedures we have followed it. So by this we are completing these sessions. Next session we will continue. Thank you so much.